the session. Amazing. And then I think Sandra has joined us. Okay. Awesome. Passing it back to you, Gail. Thanks for the activity.
Yeah, sure. It was fun. Okay, thanks everybody for participating. Just quickly, you know that we're in our third week, and we're going to this week look at project request and budget, and then you'll be submitting that as your third assignment by next Tuesday. And I just want to check in about the assignment process, because we had a week in which there were fewer of you who handed in the assignments. And I'm just wondering if anyone wants to share some feedback on, is it just a busy time? Is the assignment unclear? Do you need to have more than 5 days, to send it in? Yeah, what I know we got, the assignments from some of you who are here today. And the reason that I want to find out whether or not there's any struggles with getting the assignments done is because our goal is to help you get to a deliverable that is a full, living document, right? That's 5 pages, that has all of these elements that we're talking about each week, and that you are able to shape them along with the feedback that you get from us each week, and that you would be, oh, at the end, I've got these 5 pages and I feel good about them, and I got feedback and I worked on them, and they feel organically developed and in community. Anybody want to share if you're having any trouble with getting the assignments done?
I can't seem to find, is it Sandra?
Yeah, I can't. I just muted her, I guess. Or maybe she did. Okay.
Yeah, I'll say, like, real quick, I think it was, kind of like for me, a combination of a busy, I didn't submit this week's assignment, but combination of a busy week. And then I also think there is an aspect of I think it's like helpful to learn in community. It might also be helpful to kind of do this in community, right? Like, I think, there is like a asymmetry a lot of times with these kinds of coursework, but like, I found that when I sat down to actually do the second assignment, to write out the problem statement, it's like, oh gosh, I think maybe I could have used maybe like some, not necessarily office hours from the two of you, but even just like, this cohort of peers, this like resolution group here, to like even work on this together. So maybe like carving out an hour or two, like a slot to like let us do that together. And if the two of you are free to join, like, for sure, we'd super appreciate that. But personally for me, it was more of like, how do I condense the issue area that I think it was just like a challenge with like the constraints, with like the character constraints, right? Like, how do I condense this issue area into like, this 150 word thing.
That makes so much sense. It is hard, and thank you for that feedback. And maybe what we do, and then I'll go to Marion, is that maybe there can be a time when the peers get together, because I do think the peer learning is an important part of this boot camp. And you're right, we can inspire one another. Maybe there's a way, I'll just throw this idea out there, that the assignments on Tuesday, there could be a period of time when people's handed in, right? The assignment that they hand in is public, if people want to opt for that. And then there could be an extra day, or maybe the documents are shared on a Monday, and people can then read their cohort's assignments on Monday, and then be inspired. I'm just brainstorming here because I do think it's a really good point. Marion, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, Gail. I actually agree with Anand. I think we really, really need time to sort of like process everything, because we are redefining some of the things that we've been thinking as individuals, our either problem statements or missions. And I think the timeline does not allow us to sort of like talk even to our teams. And yet as individuals, like I think as leaders and founders and like let's say the leaders of the teams, we've tried to process these things on our own, and clearly we are trying to seek external support and design thinking time and processes. So when we're doing the assignments, it still feels like I am, like it's on me. And yet it would be so nice that this pressure during this boot camp is not on me, but more getting external feedback and external support. So for instance, the feedback you gave me to consider the existing organization that is in Uganda that I didn't even think was there. When we were designing our website, I was looking at UNICEF, for example, as an inspiration. I was looking at very far-fetched organizations that were sort of like guiding us. But if I had seen what they were doing previously, that would have been so great, because then it would give me a more contextual idea of what exactly we wanted to do. So I don't know how we can sort of like have some time to go back to even our teams and process everything and be able to bring in other people. But yeah, I agree. It just kind of feels like we have limited time and we have so much to be like taking.
Yeah. That's just a really,
And
really good, this conversation is great. And I just want to say, I'm glad that when I shared with you the website about days for girls, right? That's what you're referring to? And that
Yes.
it was helpful. I didn't mean to share it so that it was discouraging, but I wanted you to understand about the landscape. I wanted to share with you like, wow, they're doing exactly the same work. And there's we can learn from one another. And so I appreciate and respect that you took that new knowledge about an organization in your own community doing similar work, and you thought, wow, as a leader, what do I do with that? I got to go back to my team, and does this impact our mission statement, and does it impact our business theory of change, and are we going to be doing things differently? So and but I really think it's important then for us to respond to this request. And I'm not sure if Abby and I need to have another conversation afterwards, but maybe we alter the plan a little bit in that there's like a day, like let's say it's Monday, and I could be available while you're all working on your project statements or something, and we workshop together. I'd love to find a way to respond to this, because I think it's right. Yeah. Abby, what would you?
For sure. And one of the things that we can do, because I also was reflecting on how I usually notice that when we do workshops, and if we're able to workshop like certain people's problem statement or mission statement, it becomes a little bit easier. And this actually goes to the point of like being able to digest together in community, because if we are able to workshop it in class, at least 30-40% of the work gets done, and then you can kind of take that and then put that into some kind of a statement or paragraph, right? So perhaps, I know we're going to talk about at least the project request next, and some of your activities. So maybe we can find a way to like make more time for that in class, and then be able to actually also use that time to get that work started. So in the short term, that might be helpful. And one other piece of this, maybe on Monday, I know we're going to have office hours, which is actually, not the slide, but this one over here. We were planning to have offer some office hours next week. And perhaps this could be more of a community office hour. So we'll have an hour and a half blocked off in our schedule. And whoever wants to join in to talk about their like project request, their budget, which will be the assignment for next week, they can just join in. And maybe if you want to talk about the problem statement from last week and like just unpack things, you can just join it. So instead of having a 15-minute slot per person, we might just make it a 1.5 hour slot, and a Zoom link which people can join at whatever time they want.
Yeah, what do you think? That's a nice idea.
I love that.
Yeah, open this time
Yeah.
then on Monday, instead of it being individualized 15-minute one-on-ones, let's have it be an open workshop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we'll come, and then
Sounds
Abby,
good.
because you're so good at it, you can we can say, okay, Anand, you have your first few sentences for your project statement. What do you think? And the whole group, then you kind of are in a center there, and the group gives feedback.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can still
Yeah.
protect time so that everyone goes and presents, or break it up based on like who shows up, or maybe someone elects that they don't want to go. But yeah, we can still protect time. And I think it would be helpful to even have like the community forum of watching the two of you provide feedback, because obviously like someone else is going to get different feedback than what I'm going to get, and I'm going to get different feedback of what they're going to get. So just learning from each other, learning with each other.
That sounds great.
Great.
Marian, does that feel like something, and Florence and everyone else, does that feel like something you'd like to participate in on Monday?
Yeah, sure. It is something which it can really give us more feedback on our projects, on our what we have done so far. In fact, I'm in support of it. Yeah, it's something which it is really, really good. It's a good idea.
Okay, so how about if we plan on that, and then each of you choose the one thing that you want to have workshopped, not the whole 5 pages, but do you want to have workshopped or community supported, time on your project statement, or do you want to have it on your project request? You bring the thing that you would like the group to focus on.
Gail, quick question. What time on Monday? I sort of like have class almost the whole day, so it would be nice to know what time we're looking at on Monday.
Yes, so it would be between 11 Mountain Time and 12:30 Mountain Time. So somebody tell me how to translate that to
Pacific time, I guess that would be like 10 o'clock Pacific time in the morning.
Okay. I'll revert. Because
Sounds good.
I will see how to engage and participate. But just putting it out there that I have classes on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and you can always join at a certain time. So if you had a break in between where you wanted to join only for 10 minutes, we can always just like kind of have some slot available. I think to Anand's point, we can just make sure everyone goes. And so if you're like, hey, I only have 10 minutes because I have a class, like that could be something we could work on as well.
Okay. I think I'll have 15 minutes break between 10 after 10, so, or between 10, which I will confirm. So for me that would be nice.
Sounds good.
and then also
Perfect.
for those of you who are in kind of like a flow with the assignments, continue to do, meet the deadlines and send them. And then I think there were 4 people who submitted assignments number 2 this past week. And I will continue to follow the process of reading them in the Google Drive and writing my comments on the side. I'll continue to do that. And then on Monday, we'll have a workshop. And if anyone wants to send me their workshop item ahead of time, send it to me by Sunday. And then I'll just quick review it just to have a little bit of background. If you'd like to do that, or send it to everybody on the group chat, I suppose.
Thank you, Gail. I think one thing that I want to also touch on, which I think is a key piece of the course, we talk about funder readiness a lot in this program, and at Little Big Fund, that's a big part of what I think we're working on, is getting organizations and leaders of organizations funder ready. And it's not like they haven't received funding or are not capable of receiving funding, but a lot of the times access to large scale, constant, and institutional funding starts with like little small micro grants, right? And getting that access early on is a good way for you to prove that you're ready for funding in the future. And so many people have received smaller grants who are coming into this program. And then they try to kind of sharpen these 3 big things. And I just wanted to reiterate that one more time. And I guess in this group, just iterate it a bit more clearly. And the first part is obviously the writing, right? So that's the proposal that you're working on step by step, and the clarity of your ideas. The second and third parts, I think, are usually kind of unsaid in the sense that there isn't always a deliverable around it, but it's very, very important when we talk about funder readiness. So the second one's communication, your ability to effectively communicate your ideas and efficiently be able to communicate your ideas with a funder is very, very key. And this, just goes down to everything from the way you speak, to the way you communicate ideas, to the way you show up on a Zoom call, right? And that I think also leads to number 3, which is engagement. It's the overall engagement with the funder. So often we get feedback from funders about how they will, have a grant applicant who receives a fund. They get, let's say $10,000, and then they never hear from them. They have no sense of engagement. And it's not like it's your responsibility to communicate all the time. You don't have to send a daily or even a weekly update, but being able to actually engage with the funder throughout the process of actually implementing a project is a really good way to be able to make sure that they know that you're doing the work and they know how you're doing the work, so that if down the road you have a success, they can celebrate with you. And if you have a challenge or a failure, they can still be there and actually support you or give you advice. So just important to kind of keep this in mind, because a part of this course is actually simulating a lot of that funder experience, right? So it matters how you show up, it matters when you show up, and all of these other factors. So we'll come back to this, especially next week when we wrap up the course, because we hope that you're learning these skills throughout the program. But yeah, we'll kind of constantly be bringing this back in the next few weeks. I'm gonna quickly jump us into, just in the interest of time, maybe I can skip their scale, because I know we've looked at this a couple of times. Do you want to remind everyone of the final deliverables once, or?
Right. And I'm thinking just off off the cuff here, based on this conversation about workshopping, maybe we will revise the hot seat idea, right? If people are feeling when we get to the last week that they're in a different place, that they want to just dial down into their budget and just really work more time on that, we can take the lead from you. We want to meet you where you're at. So it's possible we'll ponder, and I'm open to all your ideas, that rather than have this hot seat simulation, we could have another workshopping. We could have a question and answer period. We're here for you if you feel that you're not ready, right, or interested in a meet the funder. You're kind of, that's totally fine. So yes, we want to help shape for you. We want to help you shape a fundraising proposal that would be submitted, whether you do it today or 2 years from now. That's a goal we have. We also want to help communication. We want to build a community with you, right? And we're doing that right now. And then we also wanted to give you, as Abhi was saying, the chance to kind of rehearse and keep practicing and answering questions and learning about what it is that you want to do and what it is that you can do. So it says here hot seat, but I'm personally going to talk to Abhi after this and find out if maybe we still have this, or if you have some other ideas about what you'd like to do as a culmination, right? A culmination of this boot camp. And I'm just really curious, I'm just going to go off track here a little bit, but help me understand what it is that Resolution has asked you to do in terms of writing a proposal. Has Resolution asked that you write project descriptions, or?
So yeah, actually, Abhi, could you go back to the 3 steps slide, like the writing, communication, engagement? So Gail, to answer your question, so let me just clear this thought out real quick. I think Abhi, while you were talking to, another point that came to mind that could be helpful is like knowing where to go for funders. Right. So like having like a proposal is helpful. And I've been in a place before in college where I had proposals, but not really knowing like what that next step was, because my ecosystem or my exposure was just in my like issue area. And so maybe like it would be helpful to have some leads or some spaces, or even like some connections that if y'all can introduce people to. I don't think that one really applies to me, but like, yeah, like even intros would be helpful, I think. Okay, so then Gail, to your question about like what Resolution has had us do, I mean, when we all applied for the Resolution project, we had to kind of like outline a skeletal framework for what our venture was, and we had to kind of like pitch it and like defend it in front of a few judges. But since then, I mean, there's not really like, unless you're continuing your venture, there's not really like a critical or intense like change that they like really ask you to do, or any sort of proposal that they ask you to write, right? It's totally on a voluntary basis. Resolution is like helpful in a lot of ways around that, but they don't actually mandate anything beyond it. And actually, I think like I'm an example of that, where like, yeah, my venture actually failed like during COVID, right? Like it relied on relationships, and we didn't build those relationships in that time that I was in Baltimore before COVID. So it failed. And I have not had to write proposals or anything for VFA or for resolution, excuse me.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful. And because we may, based on, this group and this cohort and meeting you where you're at, we may end up proposing that we work it a little differently with resolution. Because I just thought that our program was helping to, give an uplift, right, to some proposal writing that you've done already. And so
I mean, I think given like the stage that most of the fellows are at, it is very, yeah, like it is a very good assumption to make that most people have already done proposals, right? Because they have been looking for grants and funds in different directions, and resolution was just one of them. So like, the fact that they're in this community would mean that they like have written proposals and like done applications in this way before, but I don't know if they've done it like intentionally or like as part of like a resolution requested program. It's always been like very ad hoc, and yeah, the students are all talented in like the application sector aside, but actually working within the confines of these institutions, right? Like funders are challenging. I don't know, I've been dealing with my own like grants in the nonprofit space, and like seeing the in the different ways that they've been like beholden to funders. It's tough. So yeah, anyway, all to say, like, I think yeah, people have written a fair number of proposals, but it's just in this specific space it's maybe a little bit newer.
Okay, thank you. Abby, did you want to jump in? Or I know that our time has changed in what it was that we were planning to do, but I appreciate these conversations very much because I like to teach in a student-led way. Yeah.
Sounds good. Should we proceed with the project request, Gail?
Sounds good.
Okay. Cool. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So originally we're going to do project request and budget. We're going to try to see how much progress we make here, and then we'll readjust accordingly, which is completely fine. So yeah, I think just going back to the key elements that we've been focusing on over the last 2 weeks, and this is the third week of us talking more about fundraising and your proposal. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically around your project request, and I'll define that in a second as well. And then the second piece is we're going to touch on budget. We'll probably just kind of touch on it today, and then we'll come back to it more deeply next week. The two questions that you're trying to answer with this is, what is your specific project trying to solve, right? What problem is it trying to solve? And the second question is, how much does it cost to solve it? What are some of the items that you need to pay for? So in some terms, you could say this is kind of a simpler process than writing a problem statement where you're going quite broad, right? Rather than sharing a lot of context, you're becoming more specific here. And in many cases, what we find is that entrepreneurs that are coming into this program have already identified the problem they want to solve and a solution. So this becomes a little bit easier in that sense. Obviously, the nitty-gritty gets a bit complicated, and we'll unpack that together as a group. But I generally feel pretty good about this section of the workshop. What we've done is found a way to unpack your project request or your solution a little bit more. And so oftentimes what we see in grant proposals or any kind of investment proposals is that people will have one big, bold solution, right? And that is often a very inspiring solution that hopes to solve a pretty big and an important problem in their community. When they write that in the form of a funding proposal, that big, bold solution needs to be unpacked a little bit for whoever is the reader, in this case, the funder. They need to be able to really understand what are the different activities and what are the different costs that you need to pay for to be able to achieve that big solution. right? And we're going to take a look at an example so I can break this down for you. And that's what we're going to try to do as a workshop, and hopefully maybe have some more time for it today. Now, usually you'll have that one big solution, and you might have one activity underneath, or two or maybe three. Sometimes you have a series of activities that you are doing to be able to achieve that one solution, right? And what we suggest, and we highly recommend at Little Big Fund, is to really break down those activities, and break down the costs associated with those activities, because the likelihood that one funder is going to pay for your entire solution is pretty low. You're probably going to have to look for different funders to pay for different activities, right? And so breaking down your solution into these kind of activity boxes allows for you to be able to really kind of categorize, okay, here's a funder or a foundation or an investor that pays for this thing, capacity building, for example. Here's another funder that pays for microfinance. Oh, here's another funder that pays for a market-led solution. Perfect. I can now kind of box my funder groups into different categories and be able to apply for funding in a more systematic manner. This is so important because you're going to find, and I know Anand earlier mentioned about the searching process for foundations and just funders in general, and you're going to find there are hundreds of thousands of foundations and funders out there in the world. And if you go to all of them with all of your solution, like all of your ideas, and if you pitch like 5 different things that you want to do, the likelihood of them being able to really give you a fixed amount of money to do all of it is very low. Instead, if you have a specific activity where you want a funder to be involved, it becomes a little bit easier, right? So you want to reduce the amount of like choices you're offering to a large group of people and say, pick whichever you might fund. And also from, I think, a power dynamic standpoint, it's better for you to know what you want funding for and how you want to use the money, rather than just saying, here are all the like menu options and you choose one, right? You want to kind of lead that conversation as well. So just kind of wanted to start with sharing that before we look at a specific example. And so we've got an example of, and so yeah, basically the proposal you're going to submit usually is based on 1 or 2 activities, right? In this case, I will recommend you to focus on one. You can have multiple activities that you put in one proposal, but I do find it easier, especially in the earlier stages, to focus on one specific activity and the costs associated with that activity. So here's an example from a farm. It's called Mahi Farms. It doesn't really exist. It's an example that I brought for this workshop. And their big solution was to transition farmers towards sustainable agricultural practices, right? That's what they're trying to do, is get 100,000 farmers in their community or in their country to move towards sustainable agricultural practices. That's the big, bold solution that they have, right? That's what's inspiring. That's what's driving their work. And they have different activities. So as you can see right underneath the solution, they have 3 big activities. The first one is training on climate smart practices, a lot of the kind of capacity building or knowledge building, as we say. Second one is mentorship. So they probably connect the farmers with other farmers that have done it in the past. They've built sustainable businesses, or where mentors are coming in from outside. So what people call subject matter experts are coming in, and they're providing advice and guidance for farmers to transition their farms to be more regenerative, more sustainable. The third activity is market access. So this is probably where this company will connect farmers who produce sustainable products through climate smart practices with buyers who will pay higher prices for that product, right? They want to offer a higher price. These 3 activities, although part of the same umbrella, will have different costs, and each of them will have their own set of budget items, right? So for this example, we're only going to look at the first one, which is training. And so if you look under the training, there are a few different things that are going to come up for Mahi Farms, right? So they have to pay for a rental space, most likely that they're hosting training maybe once a week for 4 months a year, let's say. So every week they have to pay for a rental space. They have to maybe pay for transportation. They have to bring farmers from different farms all the way to one place to do the training. That's going to cost them money. They have to hire trainers who are going to come for 8 hours every week to do the training. That's a cost that they have to pay for. They probably have to provide some kind of lunch if they're going to bring farmers from their farms to attend this. And there's probably a few more things that we haven't added here, right? All of those kind of items that I just mentioned, budget items, they come together to form one set of budgets, right? And that budget is going to have its own specific target funder, right? So when you're going out to do research, you're not researching for which foundation is supporting, transition for farmers towards sustainable agricultural practices. You're going to go and look out for foundations or funders that are focused on funding work related to training on climate smart practices, right? You can find awards out there, you can find fellowships out there, you can find private investors out there who are extremely focused on climate smart practices. And there's a lot of grant funding that's really focused on this kind of work, what they call capacity building type of work, right? The specificity of your activity allows you to be more specific when you're doing your funder search as well. Now, not to say that there aren't funders who are focused on the more broad items. There are a lot of funders who just fund the whole thing. But in general, we find in the earlier stages, it is better to focus on one or maybe two of these activities at a time rather than submitting the whole thing together. I'm going to pause there to see if there are any clarifying questions before we do a couple of workshops here.
And I would add in too, this is just a wonderful beginning template, right? To help you organize all of what you want to do that Avi has presented here. And you may, as you're watching this example, you may already start to see, oh my gosh, in addition to the space, I need to have chairs and I need to have pencils and I need to have a curriculum. So you would have any number of green boxes, right? For each of the activities. And the more precise that you can get on all of those costs, those become line items in the budget itself.
All right, let's do an example. Anyone have questions before we do an example? All right, so I will need a volunteer. Gail, do you want to help me pick someone here from the group that would like to go?
Sure. Christian, do you want to workshop with us right now?
Yeah, hello, Madam Gail. I'm
Yeah,
here.
hello. Yeah. Okay. So tell us in a few words, what's the solution that you're, pondering that you want to have money for? How would you describe that?
Yeah, our solution is about providing organic fertilizer.
Okay, so to farmers, I'm assuming, is that?
Yeah, to local farmers.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, and that's the only thing that you're focused on, right? Providing organic fertilizers to farmers?
Please?
This is the big solution, right? That you're providing the organic fertilizers to farmers in your community?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Christian, will you now lay out the different activities that you need to do in order to achieve this big solution?
Yeah, I want to say the first activities, it is about having the location of production. I want to say the production location hiring. First of all, we need to hire a location for our production of fertilizer.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. What's your second activity?
Purchasing of materials. Material.
All right. And that is the materials that you'll use for organic fertilizers?
Yeah, that is for fertilizers production.
Perfect. And do you have any other activities that you'll be needing to do?
Yeah, also hiring human labor. So that may be the main activities as we can have others.
Okay. Is there anything else that's missing here? One of the things I'm curious about is who's going to be delivering the fertilizers?
I didn't hear you well, please.
Is someone going to be delivering the fertilizers?
Yes.
Is it the hired workers?
Yeah. People who are going to deliver our products are among our workers.
Okay. Is there some kind of training that you will provide, Christian, on how to use the fertilizers? Will you train the farmers on the technique of using the fertilizers itself, or is that something you're not doing?
Yes, we have also this side of things we were doing. That is among our value proposition aspects. So we do offer training in the products application system so that people can understand how applying organic fertilizer for more increased yields.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. So in this case, and I don't have the right connection piece right now, but let's see if I can. So there are 4 different activities. It seems like that will be happening. Some of them are kind of interrelated, but there are kind of 4 big pieces. One is hiring a location, purchasing materials, hiring workers to work at the plant, but also be able to deliver fertilizers. And then we've got the training of farmers, right? So these are kind of 4 things. You could probably mix them into 2 or 3 big activities for sure. Christian, I want to focus on the first one that you have, which is hiring a production location. What are some of the big costs that are associated with being able to do this work, this activity?
Okay, thank you so much, Abby. For that, in our area here, we hire 1 hectare at $100.
Okay, so this is the
for 3 years.
$100 for 3 years.
Yeah, per hectare.
Okay, per hectare. Okay, that's fine. Okay, what else is there? Are there other costs associated with this location?
Yeah, we have also costs related to approval from the town hall. So it may cost about it is about $20 to $25. It
Per
depends
month or
on,
just,
please.
is it per month or per year, the approval?
No, the approval, it is for the 3 years. If someone wants to hire 1 hectare for 3 years, it is about getting the approvals for 3 years. Yeah.
All right. What else comes to mind? I think Anand, I saw some recommendations there. Do you have to pay for energy? Do you have to pay for like electricity or something like that? Do you have to pay for electricity to use the space?
Yeah. There are costs related to that, but usually we look for solar panels. And
Okay.
yeah.
So you'll have some kind of a sustainable way to actually pay for it. Amazing. Perfect. Okay. And I'm sure there are a couple other things, right? So like the machinery, things like that, maintenance costs, right? So if you're having it for 3 years, you probably have to pay a yearly maintenance fee as well. Perfect. This, when you're writing it down, right? When you're writing a proposal, this one stream of thought around the hiring of a production location or like, renting a production location for organic fertilizer for 3 years is a very specific project. And it's a lot more compelling for Christian to make an argument to a funder that in his goal of providing organic fertilizers to farmers, the first thing that he wants to do is have a location. Because if he doesn't have that location, he can't really do any of the rest, right? You can't really do the training or the materials. All of that needs to happen afterwards. And so the first thing that you want to put in front of a potential funder is your number 1 priority, which in this case seems like it's the hiring of a production location for organic fertilizers. Now, if you had a funder who said, okay, let me fund multiple things, right? If they wanted to fund a little bit more, then you could put in a couple of these things, right? You could even put in all four. But again, the starting conversation, you probably want to ask for something more specific. And what I notice is that, especially if you're getting a micro grant, if you start with something small, something concrete you can deliver on, then once you deliver on that, you can then go back and say, hey, look, I've actually built a production location for organic fertilizers, and now we're starting to produce, this many tons of organic fertilizers. Now we need to deliver the fertilizers. We need a motorcycle that can go into different communities and deliver this fertilizer. Can you come in and pay, I don't know, $5,000 to buy a new motorcycle and $2,000 to hire a driver to deliver these things? And that argument is a lot stronger than if you ask for all of these at the same time, right? So, and again, that is important to understand when you're creating that proposal for your venture. Questions here? Anything that's unclear or other ideas that come into mind as we look at Christian's case here?
So I had this question earlier, and it applies to Christian's venture as well. What about in the case of, like, with mentorship in the example you gave, Abhi, there was no cost associated with mentorship. With Christians, because there are a lot of different costs to this piece, like, leaning on partners or leaning on, partnerships, I guess, to get some of that done. Would you want to include that in this? Like, say, for example, he can partner with some local organization that has free space for him to use. Would you want to include that in this, like, exercise, or is it just with the costs and the line items that we know of?
Yeah, that's
Does
a
that make
great
sense?
question. No, for sure. And actually, let's look at this one case, and I'm going to use some colors to be able to do this here. Okay, I'm going to color code this blue. So this blue box that you see over here, right? Imagine that Christian has a friend who has a location, and they say, you know what, I'm going to give you this location as a donation or a lease or a friendly kind of gift, and you don't have to pay me $100 for the next 3 years, and this is just a donation, right? That is actually an amazing resource for Christian to include in the budget and say, we've already gotten $100 worth of location. I don't have to pay for venue. So now the only thing I need to pay for is maybe this government approval and electricity. I need to pay for solar panels. And so what I'm asking you for is just the solar panel cost and the $25 to pay for government registration. So absolutely, you should include that for sure. It's a great way to show momentum as well.
And that's where you would list in-kind donations, right?
Exactly. And we're going to do an activity on in-kind next week, because that is one of the biggest ways in which you can actually build momentum for your project in the early days, right? So if this is something you're not paying for, you'd probably put this as in-kind, or even, and Anand, to your question about like mentorship, right? Like if, for example, if Anand actually, and this has happened a lot at Little Big Fund, we see this so often, but imagine someone offered Christian 100 tons of, and I'm just thinking out loud here, but like 100 tons, a ton of material that he can use for organic fertilizer. And they say, we're going to donate this to you. You don't have to pay for it because you're an early stage company and we want to support your work. Here. Now that's an amazing thing that you can put in a proposal, and you can say, I need a location now because I've already gotten materials. Help me reach my goal, right? So showing the fact that you've already kind of made that progress is really helpful. The same for mentorship, right? If you already have mentors who are offering their time, put that in your proposal. As long as it's not adding more costs that's going to confuse the reader, it's always helpful to show where else have you already secured funds or resources to be able to do the work that you want to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And all of those things can be valued, right? Volunteers, right, have a value. If they were not a volunteer, they might charge $50 an hour, but because they're a volunteer, you now have earned, right, an in-kind donation of that $50 an hour. Or if someone says, I'm going to, give you some fertilizer or some soil, then you can not only list that as an asset, but you can say it has a value of something. It's so otherwise it would cost.
Agreed. Thank you, Gal. Yeah. I would love to invite one more person, because this is, I think, part of the workshopping that is quite helpful. Thank you so much, Christian, for going first. Really appreciate it. Christian, maybe you can invite someone else from the class to go next. Why don't you choose someone to go?
You're welcome, Abby and Gail. Yeah, I would like to call on Florence.
Awesome. Florence, are you ready? Okay, not. Let's see here. Marian or Anand, either of you would like to go?
I'm happy to go, but Marion, if you want to jump in, go for it, please.
Sure. I don't know. Still rethinking my mission statement. So we'll see.
Good. We're in this journey together. We'll work this together. Okay. Just again, in one sentence, what is the kind of big, bold solution that you have for the venture?
So I think from what we discussed last week, the best one that we came up with was teach education. So just making sure I'm not repeating what we had disregarded last week. Yeah, which was educate vulnerable girls, skilling vulnerable girls in school with teach vulnerable girls menstrual hygiene, in schools.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Marian. Okay, so what are some of the big activities that you have already been implementing or are planning to implement underneath this?
One of the activities, yeah, we were creating awareness through school outreaches school outreaches. We also are educating them using a curriculum. We're also doing community dialogues.
And these dialogues are hosted.
Pardon?
Who are these community dialogues tailored towards?
All stakeholders. So we're having parents, teachers, local area leaders.
Perfect. Okay. Have you already developed curriculum, or would curriculum development be part of your activities here?
So curriculum development is sort of like an activity. We had just adapted a curriculum. So, but we need to sort of like develop one that is contextualized in the.
All right. So I'm just going to make a space here. So develop a contextualized curriculum.
Yes. And I think for schools, we're basically doing, instead of like, let's say outreaches, I think the schools were basically doing, how are they called? So for communities, we call them community outreaches, but then for schools, there's more of like workshops. So student-led workshops, which could mean introducing clubs for students, for girls, which we basically have piloted. But then they were more of limiting because the clubs could only host 40 girls. So we'd broaden it up to workshops that would involve even others who are not subscribing to the club.
Makes sense. Okay, so kind of either like opening of clubs or just kind of finding ways to kind of expand the club, I think is what I'm getting there. Okay. let's stick with this one because I think that's one where we can go a bit deeper right now. Creating awareness at schools through student-led workshops and open maybe new student clubs. What are some of the big items that you need to pay for? What are some of the big costs associated with doing this activity?
We would basically need are they called operational costs in terms of transport? Like we need to have the volunteer, build a volunteer. Let's actually begin with the volunteers, because you need like volunteers to build a team of volunteers who are going to sort of like lead the conversation. So these are like, so what our model is, we get university students and recent graduates who have time off and then they go with you to the schools, and you need to facilitate them in terms of transport. You have to feed them. You have to give them t-shirts to sort of like brand them as well. And then you have to give them like workshop materials that they're going to use. And at the same time, since the schools already have sort of like all these structures, so space and all that, with them, you need to give them now like materials that they're going to use during the workshop and post the workshops, education materials, skilling materials. We also need media coverage to sort of like capture the stories, because the testimonies that come off from the workshops really are very essential in the way that we track our impact. Yeah.
Makes sense. Perfect. So you might have to pay for like a radio spotlight or a TV spotlight or something like that.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for going. I know that speaking is difficult for you today, so I appreciate you going. And yeah, this is great. So again, just kind of using the examples, I'm sure there are a few more things we can think of that probably comes to mind. As I'm looking at this, I'm thinking of other costs, right? And I'm sure everyone here is too. And this is kind of a good place to be able to workshop this one specific thing, right? Creating university awareness, school awareness through these university volunteers is a fantastic activity. And that's in itself a pretty big activity. And so under that big solution of teaching vulnerable girls menstrual hygiene, this one activity can be its own fundraising proposal. And again, the recommendation is for Marian to be able to go to a specific funder and say, this is what my organization does overall. And the one project, what we call a project request, that I would like to put in front of you is this one specific thing where we're going to be creating awareness at schools. You probably have to go more specific. So are you doing this at 10 schools, 15 schools, 100 schools? That's a detail that you have to give later. You don't have to do that now, but having that idea of like, we're going to go to 20 schools and host these workshops. And to be able to do it, we need 20 volunteers, 1 volunteer per school. We need to give them $50 for transportation and food, and we need to buy them t-shirts so that they are representing the organization. Plus they need materials, they need to have space. Maybe the space is covered, which is great. And then eventually when everything is done, we have a camera person who's going to take photos. We're going to turn that into a newspaper spotlight, or we're going to record some audio, turn it into a radio spotlight. And all of this will allow this program to get better, right? You're going to get more closer to your overall goal of teaching more vulnerable girls menstrual hygiene. Marian, were you going to maybe jump in and share some more thoughts here? What do you think?
Yeah, honestly speaking, I think this workshop has sort of like been a very good space to rethink, but also come to terms with the fact that we've been doing a lot and we just need sort of like maybe focus on one solution. And I'm still rethinking what that is. Every time I'm thinking about what is it that we can possibly do, and what is it that we've been doing, and what is it that we want to do moving forward. I'm still thinking around, it's just really education. I think for us, we just want to really teach girls. That is it. And so I don't think I have much to say, because I don't want to get into, because we do a lot more than we're supposed to do, which has been so overwhelming. But maybe those are the journeys that entrepreneurs go through.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm just really looking forward to sort of like coming to terms with, is education enough? And can we just do that as an organization? Can we just educate girls and that's it? And whatever else really falls under education could come to play and unfold over and over as we go. So I'm just sort of thinking, what does education mean? You know, what does it mean to teach vulnerable girls? I think for me, that's the key takeaway from all this.
Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that reflection. Gail, do you have some thoughts on that? I know you also shared a really cool resource there.
Well, I just think it's really important work, Marian, and there's never, there's never nothing that can be done, right? And so I appreciate that you're thinking through the steps to take, and that you're opening up your ideas for how to implement, your vision. And you might find, as you think through more of this, right, with the workshop materials, for example, there may be some connections that you can make through either the government, right? I think you're based in Uganda, is that correct? Or if not, how they've been doing it in Uganda and through the Days for Girls. And you have the passion in the community that needs this information. So if you wanted, maybe on one hand, you look at what, maybe there's some workshop materials that are available that you could then borrow, right, from another organization, and then you're reducing some of your cost and then getting right out there with your volunteers to deliver it, because there's a lot of young girls, vulnerable or not, in East Africa who can benefit from the kind of vision and the work that you want to do. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it. And I think I really feel you on the challenge of like entrepreneurs feeling like they're doing a lot. They have to do a lot because it's important, and also recognizing that doing a lot sometimes means that you're diluting the impact a lot more, right? You're not able to do it with the depth that you probably could if you were just doing one specific activity. And I think that's a tough realization. It's a very tough situation to be in, to be able to choose, to be made to choose, right? And yet I think you can kind of phase this out, right? You can phase one activity into your programs and then have a second phase in 2 years where you introduce a community dialogue program. And once you're successful with educating and you've done that really well, then the community dialogue is going to be a lot easier, because the students, their parents, are going to be inspired by their students who have now been more educated, and they're going to like join you. Funding wise, the same thing. If you've done one program well, it's a lot easier to raise money for the second program instead of trying to raise more money for all the activities at the same time. So definitely kind of in the mindset of like, don't just do one thing because you think that that's the solution, but the more you can be focused on one thing, one or two things, the easier it is going to get eventually to try to then do more things eventually. And that's a very natural curve of growth of organizations. They start with one key program and then they expand into multiple things. I'm going to share my screen so that we can kind of jump into the next part, which is talking about budget. But I really appreciate, Marian, that you went in this case, and hopefully for everyone else, it's been an interesting learning experience looking at the process of really identifying your project request. Now, when it comes to writing this into paper, right, it can be as simple as this, right? And in some cases, I've even seen people use an example of a chart or a table that's as simple as saying, this is our big solution. These are the 3 or 4 activities we do. And in this proposal, I would like to ask for funding for this one activity. And here is the list of like things we do, right? Like kind of further explaining, you would probably not just write one sentence, you would explain, what does it mean to raise awareness, how many people you're going to work with, what kind of curriculum you have, all of that details, you're going to give it out there. And then you would provide your budget. And that's a very kind of beautiful way to transition into your budget, because it gives the reader a perfect sense of that one piece of the pie that you're focused on at this moment. Questions or thoughts before we look at budget next?
I'm curious, and this is a selfish question. Do you usually see, or is it common to see folks who like specialize on one area of fundraising? Like I'm thinking like even with Marion and like the college example, there is such a value in cultivating that community aspect. Do you have folks that focus just on like that one thing as like a service area? And can you even like go to a fund or go to a philanthropist and be like, hey, this is my specialty, with all of your portfolio of companies and foundations and nonprofits you support, can I help with this? Is that like something you've seen? I don't know. I'm just like, I'm kind of interested in doing that work. So I'm, you know, that's why it comes to mind, but curious to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah, Gail, I don't know what you think, but I often do find that the kind of specialist, and you don't have to be like the specialist, but just like being a bit more of a specialist in being able to do one kind of type of one type of activity is really helpful. I think, Gail, you wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about this idea of entrepreneurship as well, which I think really well connects with this.
I mean, it's a great question. It's a great idea. And I was thinking about this as well. And if Resolution has talked to you, or if some of you know about an intrapreneur, you know, Anand, do you know something about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some roles like that at different like colleges or universities, like where they'll have like a entrepreneur in residence, and their job is to focus on like, you know, kind of ecosystem building from the university scale, or even like entrepreneurship internally. I've heard that term before, but yeah, what were you hoping to bring up with it?
Well, I just think it's sometimes we meet people in these workshops and they're studying entrepreneurship, and then they realize that what they can better do than starting a new service, let's say, or a new mission, an organization, is to bring that passion for creativity and innovation to an existing organization that's doing similar work, right? So that they're not, and not just being an intern, but going to, you know, let's say, you know, the manufacturer of equipment, farm equipment, and saying, I know how farm equipment can be changed in my community. You don't know, Deere, you know, John Deere or whatever it is, but I do know. And so they act as though they're bringing innovation to the farm equipment sector, right? That is in alignment with the farmers in their community who are trying to transition from, you know, subsistence farming to, you know, more sustainability. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, because I think it's all just a melting pot, right? But there are times when I see people bring ideas for organizations and it's being done in other places. And I wish that there could be also opportunities for understanding the benefit of collaboration on one hand,
Right.
Borrowing, let's work together. I don't have to do it all because you're doing so much of it, and I'll do it over here in my special focused way for my community. But also how students could start to think about, maybe I bring this creativity that I have and I add it as an employee, right? To an organization. And I'm not going to be the person who's going to do HR, and I'm not the person who's going to do, you know, budgeting, but I'm going to be their new product person or their local. Yeah. And entrepreneurship is really pretty interesting. And it's something that Stanford looks very much towards, and Harvard and MIT. And I'm not sure if it's taught in universities everywhere, but it's an interesting conversation. Thank you for bringing it up.
For sure. Yeah. I think of it as, I mean, I think it's like ecosystem building, and that's more the space I'm interested in. And like, you know, I think the higher order question is like, what value sources exist currently that we just aren't tapping into for all of us, right? And we all belong to different communities and ecosystems, and, you know, we're overseeing value every day that could be captured in more human ways and in more alignment with community.
And I think that what we practice here might not be practiced in you know, daily or regularly in other communities, right? Which is collaboration, which is, let's bring people together, and we have our main goal. We all want girls to understand about the importance of menstrual health. And maybe we all work together. That idea in some communities of collaborating is just something to unpack and download a little bit, I think, in this world of entrepreneurship.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Gail. And yeah, the concept, I think there's some really cool articles on Stanford Social Innovation Review that I think we found in the past that are very, very interesting. So definitely recommend that's a good direction to go towards for sure. Maybe we can do a quick 2-minute stretch break, and then we're going to look at some logos because folks have sent in logos before we dive into budget. So let's do a 2-minute break before we continue. Stretch, get some water, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. All right. So last week we had talked about logos. So we looked at some really interesting logos, and we asked you to submit a few logos here. And a few people shared some really interesting logos. And I think we're going to spend a couple of minutes taking a look at those and give some feedback real time. It'll take just a couple of minutes because we're running a little bit late. And yeah, take a look at them. So Gail, pass this on to you to give some feedback off the bat.
Okie dokie.
No pressure. This is the first time you're taking a look, but no pressure.
Well, we have a smart group here, so I want to hear from them. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's so pretty. Florence, are you there? Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, first of all, Florence, I just want to jump in and say the first thing that I noticed is just the lovely color. The green is beautiful. I like that it's just got the green and the black. I like the together for us. I'm missing the impact of the hand and the open hand with the, you know, the leaf coming up. And I one initial feedback or idea is to somehow reposition or reformat the title of Ladies for Ladies. And it's hard. I'm not good at graphic design myself, but I love this open hand. I'd love to see that a little bit more. Anybody else? Anand, you had some idea?
Yeah, I was gonna say just to send like the banner, like the beige banner to the back right? And I think, Abby, you just like kind of labeled it too, just so that you can see more of that hand and like stem of that plant more. But yeah, love the color palette and like the, you know, the contrast, like the reverse contrast almost of the hand and the grain.
Right. And I really love the simplicity of together for us. I think that that's really powerful, especially in alignment with the repetition of ladies, right? It's very clear to me that this is a special niche group, right? I don't mean small, but it's ladies for ladies together, us, all of that plurality within this niche group is clear. Is there another one?
All right. Yes, let's do another one.
I might have to open this up a little bit. Oh, Grace, is Grace here?
I don't think so, unfortunately.
Okay, maybe we can look at one that is from a.
Marian's here.
Oh, Marian. Oh my gosh, that's so uplifting and exciting. And I like the oh my gosh, I like a lot about it. I like the jumping, leaping figures of the girls, right? And it really goes along with the idea of alive. I understand that the continent is Uganda and the sun rising. I think that's beautiful. I'm not sure. It kind of adds to that uplift and being alive. Yeah, I find it all very interesting. There's a lot that's working. It might be a little busy. I might, if I were to think about taking something out, I might take out maybe the yellow sun, but it's debatable. What do other people think?
I was gonna say, I kind of like the two circles, like the inner sun and the outer circle. Like, I don't know, there's some like layers or connectivity type, you know, aspect to it. Like, but no, I really like this.
Yeah,
Marianne.
got some really dynamic elements for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. And maybe maybe one iteration could be to take Uganda and have that just be a little bit smaller. I'm not sure if your full title is Girls Alive Uganda or if it's Girls Alive.
Yeah, it's Girls Alive Uganda.
I see. Okay.
So and what's the first thing that you see in the morning if you are blessed to have a very good view of the world? It's the sun.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think I should record a video to sort of like just make this thing stand out, like good morning, and then I like, what's the first thing you see? And it's this, and I'm just kidding. I think we this is like our third logo, so we've had the time to sort of like rethink. If I shared the first logo, you would really be shocked. So it's been a journey until we got here to think about the colors and the sun, and we've maintained sort of like the map of Uganda. But what has been changing mostly are are the details within the map.
Yeah, I really noticed from your participation and your voice here that you are very agile at thinking again, looping back, iterating, pondering. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful approach to take. It shows not only resilience and commitment, but it just shows this access to the open door. Like, what else is out there? What else might I be thinking about? And are you happy with this? It sounds like you are.
Yeah, I love it. We had to work as a team to sort of like get here. I'm trying to sort of like see if I could share the old logo, but
Yeah,
it was
I'm gonna change permission so you can share. You should be able to share your screen.
it was very dull. It was just like, yeah, Girls Alive Uganda. That's it.
And I think maybe that you've experienced in the process of going back and looking at the logo and talking to your team, you are also articulating your mission. You are refining your vision. So doing that in a visual way does feed back and loop into all the sort of practical communications that you have, right? The more written, forms of communication about your brand.
Yeah, sure. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yeah. Oh my
Yes.
God. Yeah. Wow, it is very different. You're right. Yeah.
So it was just that. I think when you have an idea and you get excited to be at the resolution to pitch, you sort of like just want to meet the deadline, to have your proposal to be accepted, right?
Mhm.
And then so you don't have so much time to sort of like really think through. But I think since of course, COVID happened, so we're robbed of some 2 years where schools were closed and life was really on a pause for a bit. But I should say for the whole of 2021, 2022, we sort of like started to rethink what should our website look like, what are our colors. So we move away from purple to like a very hot pink. And yeah, so the process was really it was reflective. And I think we love what we have. We love the energy, the inspiration, the connectivity, like Ananda said. But yeah, I like the logo, and I'm so happy that everyone else sort of has positive feedback about it.
Yeah. And how lovely to just share it with a group that is getting to know you and that, you're open up to our feedback. So yeah, very
Mhm. And one of the things that I was looking to do, and I don't know if this will work because it's sharing a document with an image, but it's really interesting. I had met an organization many years ago, and they sent me their logo, and I thought it was quite interesting because they're doing something quite similar, Marianne. And so this was the logo of this company. It's called Red X. And they're doing this kind of, I got this a couple of years ago, but they were working on developing menstrual health kits in Costa Rica and different part of the world. But they had a very interesting color choice for it, and the name is also red, and the X kind of also was standing out. So just wanted to share this because this was an interesting logo that stood out to me a few years ago that is doing similar work, and I think it's also quite helpful to be able to look at like small details similar to I think the details that you have in your logo and how that really stands out as well. So thanks for sharing. Awesome. Let's jump into, so these were the logos that we received so far. And if you do want to share your logo on the WhatsApp group, we can just open up for more communal feedback. I think that's a great way to learn together as well. I'm going to continue sharing my screen. Are you able to see the presentation? I don't think so. It says paused screen sharing. Let's see. Yeah, okay, now it's visible. All right, so let's take a look at budget. This is just continuing the conversation that we had about budget items. And one of the things that we like to do at this point is to just introduce a simplified way to, just put together your budget, right? This is continuing from what we did, about 15 minutes ago, which is laying out a specific project and a specific number of budget items, right? And we looked at the two examples of different organizations and what are the budget items that they have for their institutions or their programs. And so laying it out, it can be done in a lot of different varieties. We have developed a template that we offer to our participants as kind of the simplified but still a sophisticated enough budget to really paint a beautiful picture of what it is that you need to pay for this program, right? And it starts on the left and it kind of builds out to the right. So it starts with your budget item. These are the things that we just listed out earlier in the activity, right? This could include trainer, space, meals, transportation, salary. All of that is fair, right? You probably would have a few more items here. Then we kind of continue adding one step at a time, one more information into this picture. So you start with your budget item, then you have your unit cost. This is just calculating how much does it cost per person or per day or per meal, whatever it is that you're counting on, right? Now you explain how many units of that do you want to have. And for folks that have taken accounting, basic accounting, you're probably familiar with unit cost and unit, but we just want to reiterate the importance of a unit in your budget, because people somehow put together a beautiful proposal, but they don't explain the units, and it becomes so difficult when you're making a decision as a funder on whether to fund you or not to just understand how many trainers or how many hours or what's the exact unit that you're paying for, right? That kind of unit cost analysis is very, very important. And then the next one is fairly simple. It's the type of unit, right? So if you say you want to have a trainer fee and you want to have $50, are you hiring 10 trainers or are you hiring 10 hours of the same trainer, right? Those are two different items, and you want to be able to explain the difference here. And this is how you can explain it. You can explain it by just putting per day, per trainer, per participant, per month, per hour. All of these things are extremely, extremely valuable information for the reader. And then you just do the total, right? So then you're multiplying your unit cost with your units and just getting a simple total. So in this case, we put together a series of items, so trainer, space, meals, transportation, and salary, and we got a total on the right-hand side in the bottom of about $2,000. Now there's one more item that we recommend you to add, and this is what we call the ask. So in this case, if you were to say ask from Little Big Fund, you would put it in this column. This allows for the reader to know how much of this budget are you asking from our side, right? And then how much of this is someone else paying for it. It might be the case that you might be asking for all 2,000, in which case you would just put total ask from Little Big Fund $2,000. But in some cases, for example, in the case earlier, if you already have, materials, or if you already have fertilizers, or let's say you have materials for fertilizers, then that would be something that you would kind of put as empty, and then you would ask for the other items where you have to pay for things, right? Again, this is another piece that gets missed on a lot of proposals, where people will just put together their total, and then the funder will say, okay, it looks like you need $2,000. And you might say, no, I actually only need 1,000 because I already have raised 1,000. But that information was missing in the proposal in the first place. So you just want to be able to clarify that. Then the second kind of piece of this, or the second table that you probably put right underneath the first table, is your income, right? So what kind of income have you generated for this project? Have you received a donation, let's say from the Yellowtail Foundation, again, made up name? Maybe they have invited you to apply, or you're in a conversation, or maybe they're just a potential funder. It doesn't matter if they've funded you yet or not, but you're maybe expecting money from someone else, and it's okay to put that here. Now, putting the name or not is a question that you can kind of argue both ways. In some cases, it's helpful to put the names of those foundations. In some cases, it might be okay to omit that and just say expected funding from a foundation or an institution, right? And both are okay in this case. And then the second part of this is in-kind donations. So did someone give you material to make fertilizers? They give you, let's say, 5 tons of material, right? How much is that in value? I think Gail made a really good point about if you have volunteers that contribute time, their time is also something that you can calculate in the form of in-kind support. And you can actually put that into this budget and say, I've got, let's say in this case, I don't know, you have 10 friends who are all subject matter experts, and you invite them to actually do the training, and they don't charge you because they love you. They're your friends, right? Yes, they're your friends, but they're still giving their time and resources to you and your organization. You want to be able to have a rough calculation. It doesn't always have to be the exact calculation, but how much would they have charged if they were offering this to someone else, not a friend, right? And just put that together in your in-kind donations. Beginning of next week, we're going to do a ton of fun activities around in-kind to look at other types of in-kind. But in short, it can really be anything, right? It can be a resource. It can be a human being's time. It can be a certain technology, right? A phone or an iPad that gets donated. All of these things are important in-kind donations that allow you to do your work. And you want to put that in your income sheet, right, on your income table. So as an example here, in this case, let's say $500 was donated in cash for me to pay for something. And that was for the salary, right? So I covered the salary through that $500. And then I got another $500 as an in-kind donation, which was actually allocated for a trainer. What that means is that most likely you got 10 people to donate time to be trainers and you didn't have to pay for it, right? So then your total ask is about $1,000 and you've already secured another 1,000 from somewhere else. To a funder, this means you've done 50% of your fundraising. That is amazing, right? That is so inspiring. So now I want to be part of that movement because you've already gotten this far. Oh, let me come in. Maybe I can't give you 1,000, but maybe I can give another $500. And now, put you up to 1,500, or maybe I can give you the whole 1,000 and put you all the way to as well. And this, by the way, is not just for foundations. It's also for individual donations. It's for crowdfunding where you can show, hey, everyone, we need this much money. And we've already secured this much of the money in the form of resources, in the form of in-kind, or in the form of cash. And that momentum is quite helpful to share as well. This is a lot of information. So I'm going to just pause here, see if there are any questions before we move on to the next part.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abby. I would like to know something about income. When I saw income, I mainly think to how are we going to make money for our company? Yeah, it is about selling products, or yeah, how are you going to make money? I didn't realize that we have also to put inside a kind of funding or donation we received to date. Typically, I would like to know when we use income in our budget, it is sharing about funding we received to date, donation we received to date, or typically it is what about? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christian. This is a great question. And I'll just kind of do a workshop because we're right here. You can, and in some situations, and this is not always very common with nonprofit, but it's common with for-profit ventures, is that in some situations, you might actually be doing sales, right? You might be earning revenue from sales. And if that's the case, that's another thing that you want to be able to put here. So if you're selling, let's say, I don't know, 100 postcards, and for each postcard you charge a $10 fee. So if you're raising another $1,000 from that case, right, through sales of postcards, that is a fantastic thing that you would add there. Obviously, again, this example does not work because you would actually have all the money. You don't need any more funds, but you could actually be able to show that you've generated some revenue from sales. Sales is completely fine. Does not matter whether you're nonprofit or for-profit. In some context, you're not allowed to sell as a nonprofit, but in most countries, in most contexts that we have worked in, you can sell a product and generate revenue. So when it comes to income, Christian, you are correct. You're talking about how do you pay for everything, right? How do you generate money? And that can be in the form of sales, but it can also be in the form of donations or grants or in-kind support as well. It's a great question.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. In case of a profit company, and we were not already generating revenue, for example, so we have please only to put funding we received to date, or it is about sharing information on revenues we were going to make in the first production years, or in
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I would do in that case is I would probably go here to sales and say projection or projected for 2024. And you could kind of just put that there and say we're expecting that we're going to sell 1,000 postcards in 1 year, and that cash will help us with this project, right? So yes, you can definitely write projected, even if you haven't generated it yet, because it would be generated throughout the timeline of the project, ideally, right? Yeah, it's a great question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. Let me just take a look at time. Okay, we've got 9 minutes to go. I want to see if there's maybe one more question, and then we can start wrapping up, and see if we can make it to the next part, which was the mentor text here. Florence, you have a question.
Abby, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my question is, if I'm making a budget, would you advise me to make a budget for full year or just a budget? Because now I'm looking at my venture. My venture right now, it is at the idea stage. But I've been getting advice from different people, but they have been giving me different advice on budget. Some were telling me when you're pitching to a funder, it is better you make a budget for full year. Other people were telling me if you're making a budget, just make a budget just enough for you to kickstart your idea. So I'm kind of confused. Would you advise me to make a budget for a full financial year or a budget just enough for me to start my idea, to implement my idea? Thank you.
That's a great question. I have a feeling my answer is not going to be helpful or will be disappointing, because I would say you might have to do both in some cases, which is really unfortunate. And it's the biggest challenge that we see a lot in this sector is that you get different funders with different expectations on what they require from you. And in fact, in some cases, you might get an application, and Gail and I, we've seen a lot of this in the past, where someone will ask you for a project specific budget, so something like we just did, and then they'll also say, put in your full annual budget, which is going to be like a whole thing, right? Like for the whole year. And they're going to ask for both, and it's going to be a grant for $5,000. And you're just like, why do I need to give you everything if I'm just applying for a $5,000 project budget, which is for this one project, right? So the confusion is fair, and it's very natural that we don't really know what it is that sometimes is being needed from our side. And it is helpful to have both ready. In a realistic sense, things are changing a lot more. People are starting to say, give us whatever you have. Many more foundations are saying, give us the simple version. Either they'll say, give us like an annual budget, or maybe they'll just say, give us a project budget. But the more kind of majority at this point is still more traditional. So they might just ask based on what their preference is I think what I've seen so far. And I was laughing because, so I obviously also do fundraising. And so it's not, this is something that I see on a daily basis. So I want to share something that I saw this morning, which is a budget where they had instructions. This was for a coffee vision fund. And they had all these instructions, right? So they had like, please fill your budget in euros, please, all staff costs related to activities need to be included in each activity, other general staff costs in overhead section, et cetera, et cetera. And then they'd kind of done this example. And I looked at the actual budget for something that I was going to apply for. And then I took a look at it, and it's so much more complicated, because I need to break down every single activity into days and kilometers traveled for a project where I need to now estimate how many kilometers we're going to be traveling, right? And this is a realistic thing that will happen, where you will get someone that will tell you, this is our template, and you need to be able to fit within it. And unfortunately, even though things are changing, you do have to follow that, because they won't actually accept your proposal if you don't fill in their budget in the way that they want you to fill it, right? Gail, I don't know what you think on this piece, but definitely.
Oh my God. So every time when Abby, presents this part on the budget, it's just always so positive and uplifting and creative, and you make it so doable, I think. And then at the same time, you share with us just how this exercise is one exercise, and that there's going to be a practice, much like if you're, learning how to, ride a bike, right? You get on the bike and then you fall down, and then someone says, oh, lean this way, oh, lean that way. So there's both science and there's art to it. And I think long-term, as leaders, having the capacity, the agility to think both today and then 2 years from now is what's going to make you even more special than you already are. It's unfortunate that there's still this unnecessary burden of kilometers per day. I mean, for crying out loud, that's crazy. However, there's an agility that comes with practicing, having one budget for today, maybe up on the wall, you have budget number 7, and that's in case, like, you know, Elon Musk calls you or something. You know, it's hard and there is no easy answer. We just hope that in this class, you get an example and a practice for being very, very specific for on that occasion when you come across something that says, we'll give you a micro grant, we'll grant your pilot project. We want to get to know you. It's sometimes people call it a first date grant, right? So I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Gail. Appreciate that. Okay, so I think we're gonna move towards. Okay, so awesome. Great to hear that you have a source for your assignment, Marian. Thanks for sharing that as well. Let's take a look at our assignments for next week because we only have 3 minutes. And then one thing that I want to pick up early next week is our reading. I know there was a case study which is continuing this conversation, and unfortunately we didn't get to it. I apologize for that. We're going to start next session talking about this. So please, if you haven't read it, come prepared. And we're going to also send you the 4th version so you can read both together. And we will unpack it at the beginning of next session. So here's the kind of assignment recap for you before you go. The first assignment is to watch some additional videos. And so we've prepared 2 sets of videos. I'm going to send this PowerPoint presentation. You can click on those. You'll be able to watch the videos. There's one on project request and one on budget. After that, write your project request and your budget in the Google form. We're going to have time on Monday. So if you were like, Avi, I don't understand this budget thing yet, come on Monday. We'll have a conversation. We'll unpack that more. If you're feeling confused about your problem statement or something from the last few weeks, we will have time as well. And we're going to send you the 4th part of this case study so you can read that along with the part 3 and come back and present your final thoughts. As always, the assignments are going to be due on Tuesdays, and we hope you're able to submit them so that you can get one last round of feedback before your final assignment that will be due next week as well. Thanks everyone for being part of it. We have one last session together, session 4 on the 1st of December. And yeah, just looking forward to kind of seeing where a lot of your work evolves in the next week and beyond that as well. Thanks for being here. All the folks that are here, we really appreciate you for joining and for showing up. It's a really important part of this process of fundraising is showing up, as I mentioned. And so appreciate you being here, being participative and engaging. And if you weren't able to join, we hope you can join us for the next session. It is an important piece that you're here for the live sessions as well. Thank you all. And yeah, wish you a lovely Friday morning and afternoon and also evening as well.
See you on Monday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks all. See you all.
Bye.
Nice weekend.
Yes, wishing you all a lovely weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye all. Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care. Oh, this note taker is still here. There we go. There we go. Awesome. Okay, gone. I'm gonna just pause this real quick.